Yeah. All I need is one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, where I watch shit so you don't have to. And today I'm here to talk about episode 4 of Hulu's, not HBO's, Hulu's 9 Perfect Strangers, entitled Brave New World. Now, I think this title kind of refers to, I don't want to say the willingness or acceptance of taking drugs to enhance your therapy experience, but I think overall the group decided that they were kind of like going to turn a blind eye almost. Like, oh, we're going to pretend like this isn't a thing. Like, we're not going to snitch about it. We're not going to bitch about it, at least not continuously. And we're going to just, roll along with it, and we're going to stay. Because if you were against it, you would leave. But they're all staying, including Napoleon, who who seemed hesitant, but he was the one that stood up and gave his nice little speech like he's willing to do it. So I think that's them opening themselves up to whatever it is that Masha might have planned for them, including microdosing of shrooms. And that shows that they are, in essence, entering a brave new world in which they are going to allow this stuff to happen. So, so I think that's where the title comes from. But talking about the show a little bit, again, like I mentioned in the previous episode on this channel, not the previous episode of the show, when you have a cast this big, you have to perform a pretty strong balancing act. You're trying to give background on the 9 guests, Masha, the 3 staff members. So we're looking at, 13 people that you kind of want to give equal attention to. And there's going to be some balance there. You can't give everybody the same amount of attention every single episode. So what you probably want to do is you want to give maybe 3 or 4, characters some focus in one episode, do a little bit with the others, and then, 3 or 4 different ones the next episode, something like that, right? And that, I think, is what's going to allow me to kind of like change up the way that I'm going to talk about this show in particular. So, like, for instance, this week, we didn't get too much on Ben and Jessica this week. We didn't get too much on Lars this week, but we learned a lot about Carmel this week. And when I'm watching it now, I'm kind of piecing that together, like the idea that they're spending more time on some characters than others, which is to be expected. I thought a good way to approach talking about this show on this channel would be kind of like to go through what we learned about each character each week, and then kind of like talk about those things as much as they need to be talked about. So, if we didn't learn much about somebody, I'll say, hey, we learned so-and-so about this person, and, not too much to go off there. Or I might spend a whole lot of time talking about a specific character that we did learn a lot about. So I figured that'd be the best approach to take, rather than kind of like a linear episode approach where it's kind of like, this is what happened, and then this happened, and this happened, et cetera, et cetera. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with Masha, because the episode picks up where the previous episode left off, with Heather and Napoleon kind of challenging Masha, saying like, hey, are you drugging our shit? Like, what's going on here? And the episode ends, and then this episode picks up in that same place. So one of the things that I'm going to do, and this is particularly with Masha, I kind of look at Masha and the staff kind of as like one group. Masha has her own story, but like, I already know we're not going to spend time on the staff members individually. We're probably going to spend, if we do, I'll spend time talking about those people. But my perspective on perception on what I think they're going to do with the staff members is like their progress is always going to be intertwined with Masha. So whenever I talk about Masha and I say, okay, I'm going to talk about her now, that kind of is going to encompass all of the staff as well. Those 3 other people, Yao, Delilah, and Glory, who I don't even remember getting her name in the first 3 episodes, but they mentioned her name like 2 or 3 times in this one. Or maybe they mentioned her in the first 3 episodes and I just didn't know who they were referring to yet, so I kind of let it go. But like I said, we learned that Masha's been microdosing the group with shrooms. Tony's thought he'd been getting his oxy, but I guess he'd been getting shrooms in pill form. I don't know. But we figure out that Napoleon's big speech at the end of episode 3 was partially influenced by the drugs. And everyone seems to be pretty pissed off about the lack of consent, which is fair. But one thing that I learned about Masha, and I kind of like this about her character, she always has not just an answer to every issue, but actually a pretty good one. They talked about, I think it was Ben, that something like, why didn't you tell us this, or something like that. It's Ben or Tony. She said something like, because you wouldn't have, you'd have said no. Okay, well, yeah, that's usually why everyone doesn't tell somebody shit, because they know that they're gonna get a response that they don't like. But she's coming from a place where she also added on, like, you know, you could go to the police and say that I did this, but you're gonna be thanking me at the end of this. And I think that added some intrigue to this whole decision to not tell them. And then she goes on to talk about like these benefits of shrooms, like, which are these are factually accurate things. Like, if you Google, you know, magic mushrooms or psilocybin, I think is the name of it, it is said to have these properties. Like, it can help you with depression, it can help you with like all this kind of stuff that these people are dealing with. It can help with those things. So I thought that was interesting that every question that was posed to her, she had a response for. But I mean, when you this is clearly planned out, right? She's got these protocols and whatnot, so she's probably prepared for, like, you know, if they find out that I'm microdosing them through the smoothies. Which, side note, I've been wondering what was up with the smoothie. So glad to get an answer to that. But, you know, if they find out what happens with the smoothies, this is what I can say. Or, you know, if you know, they have concerns about the drug itself, I have an explanation for that. So she's prepared, and she's prepared with pretty good factual answers. So not too mad about what I saw from her actually this week, even though I think Nicole Kidman leaves a lot to be desired. But I promise I'm not gonna shit on her every week. That's not necessary. I'll only do it when it is necessary. So we didn't spend too much time with her after that. We did learn that, one, she's actually having at least a sexual relationship with Yao. And you know, I mentioned in the previous episode that we know that we can tell that there's some kind of sexual tension between the three of them. And we learned that Masha is having sex with Yao. Delilah finds out, she's not happy about it. And then we also learned that, well, I can't say we learned, but we see like a flashback to her being shot at the beginning of the episode. And then at the end of the episode, we see that somebody has broken into her place or her room or whatever, broken that bowl. I believe that was supposed to be that bowl that she showed Carmel. That was Carmel she showed the bowl. Was that Francis? That was Francis, I think. And then there was a thing that said, what did it say? It's good to die on her picture painting or whatever, and sticky notes. And you know, the dynamic between her and Delilah, it's been tense. It's been a tense relationship between the two of them. You can tell that Delilah is not happy or jealous of the whole situation with her and Yao. We find out that Delilah is also on these. Well, we don't know if it's actually psilocybin. She might be on something else, but she's on some sort of drug that's supposed to help with her bipolarness, and I have a bipolar thing later too. That's supposed to help with that, and she hasn't been taking it. It's part of her contractual obligations to be on this. And the show even wants us to think a little bit that Delilah might be the person that's threatening her, which immediately makes me dismiss it as an option. Yao flat out asks her, and then I think just kind of like the looks that Delilah gives, and like those kind of lingering kind of glares. I think we're meant to wonder if she's behind it, but when they make it obvious like that, I immediately dismiss it. Let's see, what else did I have about Masha? That's it. Okay, I covered everything I want to say about Masha. Next person I wanted to talk about was Lars. Speaking of Pulitzers, I can't say speaking of Pulitzers because I left it out. But there was a moment where Lars asked her. He said something like, "Oh, you gonna make gobs and gobs of money doing this?" He says, "Yeah, I might make gobs and gobs of money, but you're an investigative journalist and you could win a Pulitzer." And that's really all we learn about Lars this week, is that he isn't, in fact, an investigative journalist. He's been bonding with Napoleon and Heather's daughter, Zoe. He's been bonding with her a little bit. We find out he's broken up with his boyfriend recently, who we saw a little bit of that phone conversation in one of the first 3 episodes. But we don't spend too much time on Lars. Lars don't even know what Lars wants to do. Zoe's like, "What's your angle here? Like, what are you gonna do? Like, what's your plan for how you're gonna report on this place?" And he's like, "I don't even fucking know." So I find it interesting that they spent so little time on Lars, and then the character himself doesn't even really know what he wants to do. Carmel. So Carmel has her one-on-one with Masha, and it's a pretty good scene because, you know, we find out about her husband being kind of like verbally abusive as well. You know, said a lot of shitty stuff to her, treated her like shit. Apparently had been cheating on her consistently with various women. Dipped on her for a younger chick named Lillian, who her kids love. That's the worst part of it. The fact that the kids love the new woman. And they're off in Italy gallivanting around, and she's there at the, you know, at Tranquillo. And she shows a scar across her breast that has she says it's from he bit her out of passion, and she rubs it and says that she fondles it every night to remind her. And I think that's such a sign of the amount of abuse that she was under, because you know, it's almost kind of like a Stockholm syndrome a little bit, right? You know, this guy treats her like shit. He bites her to the point where it leaves a scar, and she looks at that as one of the good moments. And I thought that was a interesting moment for her. And then, you know, later they're in this room. I don't know what you would call this room, but it's a room with like this dummy in it that a literal dummy, not a stupid person that's there. A literal dummy dressed up in some kind of like samurai garb, and they give them like this wooden sword, you know, and they want them to take out their aggressions on this dummy. And you know, what they did was which I thought was a really good scene again with Carmel, they ran off the various hurtful things that the husband had said to her that Carmel relayed to Masha in their one-on-one. We didn't see this, but she says, you know, can you write down some of the things that he said to you? And they start reading those things off. And she starts beating the shit out of this thing, and it gets worse and worse and worse, to the point where it gets to a level of violent that everyone there is kind of just like, whoa, like what is happening right now? And it makes me wonder if Carmel is bipolar, which is why I said more on that later. But now that I'm thinking about it, or as I'm talking it out, it makes me wonder. It makes me wonder if her character is just simply more complex than you would think, because you know we saw her trying to be very personable with who was it, Lars, in that like convenience store in the first episode. And she's like either very soft-spoken, meek, and seeking of acceptance, again, which makes sense considering the relationship she came out of, or she's incredibly violent and off the handle, which again makes sense given the relationship that she was in. So I find Carmel to be significantly more interesting now than I did after the first 3 episodes. I'm like, okay, she's just weird. But now that I've learned the nature of the relationship that she's coming from, I think that there's a lot of interesting work that they can do with that character throughout the course of this season. You know, we're halfway through it now, and I think we have a pretty good picture of who these people are. So now I want to see where is this show going to take it, because I'm still kind of in a place like, what's the point here? Where are we going with this? So I like where they're going with Carmel. I'm very interested to see what kind of breakthrough she's going to have. If she's going to have like a big scene like Napoleon did in the last episode, because I could see that, you know, some kind of breakout thing for her where she's like pushing past the pain of what her husband did to her. Because another thing I forgot to mention, and well, I didn't forget to mention it this time, but I mentioned it in the previous video, you know, that she also has the hang up over her losing her career over this guy. So she's been through a lot, and her very bipolarish kind of personality, where it's like it's one extreme of meek and yearning for acceptance and approval to lashing out and violent. Like, I think that is born out of her tragic kind of backstory, and I think that's been pretty interesting to follow. At least it was in this episode anyway. We didn't learn too much about Frances. She had she kind of like helped other people out throughout the episode. She had a interesting conversation with Tony that I'll get to it in a moment. But, you know, in that same room with the samurai dummy and the stick sword, she did some like shockingly, I don't want to call them good, but like moves that look like she actually used the sword before on the dummy once she started envisioning it as being the guy who catfished her. And I kind of feel like I'm not as interested in the relationship aspect of Frances's past. This catfishing guy, it's almost kind of like, I don't know, it's kind of hard to feel bad. Not feel bad, but it's kind of hard to understand and accept someone having that level of a reaction to that situation alone. Like, I want to, if we're going to talk about Francis's past as far as relationships, I want to hear about the failed marriages. I want to hear more about this kid, all that kind of stuff. I'd like to get a little bit more of that before we have her out here being goddamn Seventh Samurai out here and looking kind of goofy, honestly. Like, that was kind of like a weird moment to me, and very, very, very predictable. But Francis also has a pretty good moment with Tony where we find out now that Tony is not simply a football player who had his career ended. We find out that he got into a bar fight that he did not start, and he accidentally killed the guy, which was a nice little, I don't want to say a callback because it was early in the episode, but Masha says at that table that, have any of you ever killed anybody? And Tony kind of just like, yo, you're fucking with us. And we find out that he has a whole lot of skeletons in his closet over that. And that's another one that now Tony, I raved about Bobby Cannavale in the previous video. And I was watching this episode, I'm like, they're not giving Bobby too much to do here, which is interesting. But once we got that scene, he instantly became more interesting too, because you look at him at the start and he seems like he's just a guy that likes to do drugs. Then they go, okay, well, he fucked his knee up and it messed up his career. And you're like, okay, well, maybe he got addicted to drugs because he's on painkillers from his knee or whatever. Probably, pretty upset about his career. But that still doesn't feel like, that's not a very three-dimensional character to me. We've seen the failed athlete umpteen amounts of times in various television shows and films. So I don't really look at that as like, I feel like, is that all Tony gonna be about? But now you add in the guilt of having accidentally killed someone. And you could tell this isn't just a thing where it's like he let it go. Because he ran off like this guy had a mom, a dad, a sister. Like, he learned about this guy's life. And, he was able to, quote unquote, get away with it because this happened pre-social media. And there's got to be even more guilt that lives there when you already feel bad about it, but you didn't face any consequences over it. And you couple that with the knee and the failed career and all that stuff, and now his drug use becomes a lot more interesting. So I am now, again, like what I said about Carmel, I'm leaning a little bit more in that direction with Tony as well. I found Bobby Cannavale to be captivating whenever he's on screen, but I found the character to be not too deep. But now we're getting somewhere with that, so I'm feeling pretty good about where we're going with Tony as well. Napoleon seems to be okay with the drugs now. He didn't like seeing what Carmel did, but he got laid for the first time in 3 years, so good for him. Heather seemed to be turning a corner a little bit. Again, I'm putting that highly on the drugs, but again, back to Masha though, right? Masha said this will help you, and again, like I said, this is scientifically proven that shrooms can have that impact. And it is having that impact. She's, Heather's like, oh, these sheets feel good. Heather's kind of opening up. Napoleon's opening up. Zoe doesn't even want to leave. So it's interesting that as kooky as Masha might seem, everything that she said so far has come true, and they do seem to be a bit more accepting of what they have going on there. Like I said, we didn't spend too much time on Ben and Jessica. They weren't dosed, which I do find interesting. I'd very much like to know why. They weren't dosed. Jessica is not happy with that, so she accepts some Molly in exchange. Okay, cool. But again, not too much time spent there. And I kind of feel like right now Ben and Jessica are the least interesting group there. And I'm wondering if it's going to stay that way and we're going to walk away from this like they didn't do too good with Ben and Jessica, or if Ben and Jessica are going to have something incredibly interesting happen or be divulged at some point, because two people there just to work on their marriage seems like small potatoes compared to what like Carmel is dealing with, compared to what Francis is dealing with, compared to what everybody is dealing with. Them two just wanting to work on their marriage seems like, why would they be there? But we know that Masha handpicked these people, so something good's got to come out of it, right? And let's see, I've talked about everybody. Yep, I've talked about everybody. So that's kind of where we're going to end up. I have a couple of thoughts that I want to wrap up with. I feel like Hulu should have that skip intro feature that HBO Max and Netflix have that allow you to skip past the music or whatever like that. I don't have anything against the music, but like, sometimes I want to just hurry up and get through the episode, and this ain't Succession. It doesn't have a banging theme song. Like, let me just skip past that and keep it moving. And then Jessica, I don't know if any of you have watched Schitt's Creek, but Jessica is giving me very big Alexis vibes from Schitt's Creek. And then I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but her two front teeth kind of look like one tooth. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. So I'm telling you right now, if you're watching this video, if you haven't already noticed it, next time you watch it, you're gonna see it, and it looks like one big ass tooth, and you won't be able to unsee it, and you're gonna look and you'll be like, thanks a lot, motherfucker, for making me see this one giant fucking rabbit tooth that she has. But that's all I have for this week. I'm gonna keep going like this, where I'm gonna kind of like break down each character and what we learned about them. I'm kind of like still kind of like working out the kinks off of being off for a little bit. And I've never done a show like this where I've kind of like talked about each character specifically. You know, that's not generally how I do things, but I feel like it works good on this channel. And I want it to be, you know, I want it to flow a little bit better than I feel like it did today. But so far so good. I'm still satisfied with it. So I'll see you guys next week for episode 5. Until then, peace.